This is Recipe for Sleep, a podcast where we dust off very old cookbooks and let them lull us into dreamland. I'm Erin Brindley, a chef and storyteller. Tonight, we're returning to The American Pastry Cook, published in 1894, and finally, after 2 episodes worth of intro, we get to the meat of the book, the recipes. Our author, Jessup Whitehead, does not lose his salt once the recipes begin. He peppers random history and color commentary throughout the cookbook, throwing all the 1800s shade at the women who bake the cakes for his church fair and gossiping about the inventor of angel food cake. If someone were to ask me why I love making this podcast, I'd tell them the angel food cake story. It's towards the beginning, so hopefully you won't fall asleep before. But if you do, I encourage you to pick it up where you left off tomorrow night. To my delight, recently I've been running into listeners. Renee, Andrew, Karen. Thank you for letting me tuck you in at night. And for the rest of you out in dreamland, I'm honored to be in your ears. Now, it's time to put away anything you were doing and snuggle deep into your sweet covers. Softly close your eyes and imagine the kitchen of your mind. There are 2 cupboards there. Yesterday's cupboard for all the things that have already happened that your mind wants to chew on. And tomorrow's cupboard for all the things you're going to do or what's going to happen later. It's time to put everything away in those cupboards. Imagine closing each one. You made it to this cozy, quiet time of day where there's nothing to do but listen to me read recipes to you until you drift off to sleep. The Hotel Book of Fine Pastries, Ices, Pies, Patties, Cakes, Creams, Custards, Charlottes, Jellies, and Sweet Entremets in variety. Being part of the Oven and Range series by Jessup Whitehead. 1. Angel Food or White Sponge Cake. 11 whites of eggs. 10 ounces of fine granulated sugar, all that can be shaken and heaped on a cup. 5 ounces of flour, a cup moderately heaped. 2 rounded teaspoonfuls of cream of tartar. 2 teaspoonfuls of vanilla or lemon extract. Get 2 pans together. Put the cream of tartar into the flour and mix them by sifting out of one pan into the other 6 or 7 times. Whip the whites firm enough to bear up an egg. Put in the sugar. Beat a few seconds. Add the flavoring. Then stir in the flour lightly without beating. When the flour is mixed in fairly out of sight, it is finished. As soon as mixed, put the cake in the oven. It needs careful baking, like a meringue in a slack oven, and should stay in from 20 to 30 minutes. A deep, smooth mold with an unusually large tube is the best, but any other will do. The mold should not be greased, but when the cake is done, turn it upside down, the tube or something else holding it up to let the air in, and leave it to get cold before trying to take it out. Then cover it with the plain sugar glaze of the next receipt. The rule for angel food in large quantities is a pound of sugar, a pound of whites, half a pound of flour, and an ounce of cream tartar. Angel food, as this peculiarly white and light sponge cake is fancifully named, has quite a history to be recorded. It originated in St. Louis a few years ago and is seen oftener in the hotel bills of fare for that city than anywhere else. S. Sides, who kept a large cafe or restaurant there, invented it and did not fail to make the most of his discovery. And it soon came into such great demand that not only was no fine party supper complete without it, but it was shipped to distant cities, orders coming even from London. For some time, the method of making it was kept a profound secret, but at length, the inventor yielded so far as to sell the receipt for $25, having it understood that it could not be made without a certain powder, which could not be obtained but from him alone. It did not take long to discover that the powder was nothing but cream tartar, and the receipt, once communicated, gradually became common property. Many of the caterers for parties made a specialty of it, for it is still sufficiently difficult to make always alike to prevent it becoming utterly common, and a considerable number of the cakes are sent out, packed in boxes, to surrounding towns, and occasionally to the east and south. The difficulty, such as it is, that makes the caterers say this cake has been more trouble to them than anything else, and leads to the use of special molds to bake it in, is the tendency to fall at the center after baking. The mold, not being greased, holds the cake up to its shape until cold. The lamb's wool texture of it may be made finer by stirring after the flour is added. The cake will be better when a day old than first baked, but to keep the outside from drying and to make it better eating, as it has no richness in its ingredients, it is always covered with a flavored sugar glaze or icing. It may have no direct connection with it, but Sides, who originated angel food, afterwards lost his reason and was taken to an insane asylum, his wife continuing the business he established. 2. Pearl glaze for angel food, etc. 1 cupful of icing sugar, 2 whites of eggs, 2 teaspoonfuls of flavoring extract. Mix them together in a bowl. As soon as the sugar is fairly wetted, it is ready, but may be whitened by beating 1 minute. It dries pearl white. Takes but a few minutes to prepare. Spread it over the bottom and sides of angel food. It also gives a rich, transparent, sort of eatable appearance to the top of a fine jelly cake, and shows up ornaments of finished white icing finely. It does nearly well with the sugar only slightly wetted with water instead of white of egg, when it is spread on pastry, as the sugar dries white. It can also be colored pink, or with chocolate, or made yellow by mixing with yolk of egg. 3. 8-egg sponge cake. 1 pound of fine granulated sugar, 2 rounded cups, 8 eggs, 6 tablespoonfuls of water, small half cup, 12 ounces of flour, 3 rounded cups. Separate the eggs, the white into a bowl, the yolks into the mixing pan. Put the water and sugar in with the yolks and beat them 10 minutes until they are thick, light batter. Have the flour ready. Whip the whites to a very firm froth. Then mix the flour with the yolk mixture and stir the whites in last. Bake in molds either large or small. Good for large and small sponge cakes and lady fingers. 4. White jelly roll. The angel food cake does not answer to roll up, but nearly the same ingredients put together in another way make a fine roll and also white cake lining for Charlotte Russe. 10 ounces of granulated sugar, a heaping cupful. 12 ounces of whites of eggs, 13 whites. 6 ounces of flour, a heaping cupful. 2 rounded teaspoonfuls cream of tartar. Vanilla or lemon extract. Put the sugar and white of eggs into a deep pan, pail, or brass kettle and beat them together with a wire egg whisk about 20 minutes. If beaten rapidly in a cool place, the mixture will then be like good cake frosting. Then add the cream of tartar and flavoring and beat 1 minute longer. Next, stir in the flour with a spoon. It should be baked immediately. Lay a sheet of blank paper on the largest baking pan. Spread the cake only just thick enough to hide the paper. Bake about 6 or 8 minutes. Brush the paper over with water to get it off. Spread lemon or orange honey or red jelly on the cake and roll up. 5. Lady cake. 14 ounces granulated sugar, 12 ounces of butter, 12 ounces of white of eggs, 1 pound of flour, 2 teaspoonfuls of flavoring extracts, half teacup of milk, the juice of 1 small lemon. Use uncolored dairy butter. Warm the sugar and butter slightly and stir them till white and creamy. Add the egg whites a little at a time, and after that the flour. Don't beat the white of eggs before mixing. Beat the whole mixture thoroughly after the flour is in. Then, mix in the lemon juice and flavoring, and last of all, milk. 6. Delicate cake. 14 ounces of granulated sugar, 12 ounces of butter, 12 ounces of white of eggs, 8 ounces of flour, 8 ounces of cornstarch, juice of half a lemon, 2 teaspoonfuls of flavoring extracts, half cup of milk, 1 basting spoonful of brandy. Beat all together well. 7. Snow cake. 14 ounces granulated sugar, 12 ounces of white dairy butter, 1 pound of white of eggs, about 18 whites, 8 ounces of fine flour, 10 ounces of cornstarch, juice of 1 lemon, half cupful of milk, flavoring extracts, little brandy. Don't beat the whites to a froth. Cream the butter and sugar together. Add the whites a little at a time. Then the starch and flour. After that, the lemon juice, flavorings, and milk. Beat well. 8. Finest chocolate cake. Melt 4 ounces of common chocolate by merely warming it in a cup set to the side of the range. Make the snow cake mixture preceding. Flavor it strongly with vanilla and leave out the brandy. Pour in the melted chocolate and beat it in just before the milk. 9. Finest wine cake. Make the snow cake mixture and leave out the milk. Instead of it, mix in at the last nearly a small teacupful of Madeira wine with enough either of red strawberry syrup or of drops of carmine to make the cake couleur de rose, but only pale blush or peach bloom. Not any dull red or purples for cake. The lemon juice is very necessary here. It changes red to bright pink. 10. Marble cake. Make either of the white cake mixtures. Take out about half a cupful and color it light red with strawberry or currant syrup. Butter a cake mold, flour it, and shake out the surplus flour, leaving the mold thinly coated. Drop lumps of cake batter in the mold with a teaspoon. Paint them over with a knife dipped in the red batter, but without flattening or smoothing or running the lumps together. Drop more spoonfuls of the cake mixture in the hollows and paint them over with a knife blade dipped in red as before, and so fill the mold within an inch of the top. There will be fine waving lines of pink through the cake when cut. Chocolate and white can be used in the same way. The snow cake mixture is apt to be too soft to keep form by spoonfuls unless quite cold. Luck is the poorest possible ingredient in cake making. The same cause will always produce the same effect. The exact proportions that will make a splendid cake one time will make the same every time if put together in the same way. The question is only to find the right proportions. Turkish cake. Fine chocolate cake with figs, almonds, and raisins. The snow cake mixture will not bear up the fruit. Make the lady cake mixture. Add to it 4 ounces of chocolate melted by heat in a cup. Then prepare 8 ounces of chopped figs, 8 ounces of almonds blanched and split, 8 ounces of seedless raisins. Flavor the prepared cake batter with vanilla and a little brandy. Dust the fruit with flour and stir it in. What makes us think that the ladies cannot make delicate cakes, for sure, just when they want them, is the exhibition they sometimes make at a church fair, where everybody contributes a cake with their names on. They look awful, like a cake hospital. 12. Almond cake. Make the lady cake mixture, the first receipt of the series, and add to it a pound of almonds, blanched, scalded and peeled, and split. Also use almond extract and rose extract to flavor with. Dust the almonds with flour. The snow cake mixture would be too delicate to bear up the almonds. 13. White raisin cake. Like the preceding, with a pound of sultana seedless raisins instead of almonds, and flavor with lemon and extract of nutmegs. This is best baked in shallow pans and sheets, but of that, more further on. And it is for these church fairs or other public festivals the dwellers in the world of private houses try to succeed and show their best, if ever, but they seem to always fail. 14. Queen cake. Made with a lady cake mixture number 5, except the milk. 1 pound of the greenest colored candied citron. 1.5 pound of almonds blanched and split. 1/2 pound of sultana seedless raisins. 1/2 cup of sherry or Madeira wine. The citron is to be cut in fine shreds and floured together with the almonds and raisins before mixing in. The mixture also makes small queen cakes, baked in little patty pans, and these, frosted on top, are among the finest possible. It is at these times they make the master of the house buy a cord of hickory wood and hire a man to saw it, because it makes such a nice, steady heat to beat the cake with. And they send a boy on a horse to a friend's in the country to get some right fresh eggs, because there are none in the whole town good enough. And then they have Julia to dry the flour, and Betsy to wash and pound the butter, and Susan and her little sister to beat the eggs, and it is bad for the poor cat if she gets in the way. We fellows who live in bakeries don't positively know that these things take place, but have picked up such impressions some way. But we do know how the cakes look when they get to the fair. 15. Hickory nut cake. 8 ounces of sugar, 8 ounces of butter, 8 ounces of white eggs, 9 whites, half cupful of milk, 1 rounded teaspoonful of baking powder, 1 pound of flour, 12 ounces of hickory nut kernels. Don't beat the whites to a froth. Warm the butter and sugar together and rub them to a cream the usual way. Then add the eggs, then milk, powder, and the flour. When well mixed, stir in the hickory nuts. Flavorings may be added at option. If brandy be used, the baking powder should be left out. 16. There is one cake marked, presented by Mrs. A. It rose one-sided. The top cracked all over, looked like all slits and gullies, and in the high side a crater opened, and the lava kept rising and running, and never would get cooked and stop, though all the rest of the cake was done hard long ago, and began to smell unpleasantly. That cake was poor, had too little butter, and too much eggs, milk, and flour, and probably was not put into bake for some hours after the batter was mixed. There is another, presented by Miss B. It rose and rose, flat-topped and even, but never got above the edge of the cake mold. It leaked over the top and hung in strings, and fell to the stove bottom, and made a smell, and when it got tired of that, it just sunk down and down again. That had too much sugar. 17. Dream cake. In a city that we know of, there is an entire side of a building in a fashionable neighborhood painted in large letters with the words, "Celebrated Dream Cake." Evidently, it was the aim to rival the fame of angel food, and this is certainly better eating, although scarcely so extremely white. 1 pound of granulated sugar, 2 cups. 1.5 pound of butter, 1 cup. 12 whites of eggs, 1.5 cup. Half pint of milk, 1 cup. 2 rounded teaspoons baking powder, 1 rounded teaspoon cream tartar, vanilla or lemon extract, 1 pound good weight of flour, 4 cups. Sift the flour, powder, and cream tartar together 3 or 4 times over. Soften the butter and stir it together until white and creamy. Gradually stir in the milk, tepid, and a handful of flour to keep them from separating. Whip the whites to a froth and add part whites and part flour until all are in, and flavoring extract at same time. Bake either in cake molds or shallow pans, and frost over when done. Kossuth cakes. Make sponge drops large and thick. Hollow out the bottoms. Put in whipped cream or pastry cream. Place 2 together, and with a fork, dip them in melted sweet chocolate or chocolate icing, and set on tins to dry. A specialty of Baltimore confectioners. Sell at about $1 a dozen. 18. Ordinary white cake. 1 pound of sugar, 8 ounces of butter melted, 10 whites of eggs, 1 cupful of milk, 2 teaspoonfuls of baking powder, 1.5 pounds of flour. Beat the sugar, melted butter, and yolks all together a minute or 2. Add the milk, powder, flour, and flavor. Now, if we had to make cakes in some place where people took notice and made remarks and said we did not know much about making good things in hotels' know-how, and if they couldn't do better, they would sell out, we should want to make the snow cake as beautiful and white as cotton batting. Bake it thin in jelly cake pans. Spread some of the richest confection between the cakes and ice the top, having the cake and the icing so near alike in whiteness as to be hardly distinguishable apart. 19. Pistachio cream cake. 8 ounces of pistachio nuts, blanched and chopped. 8 ounces of sugar. Half cupful of water. 2 ounces of butter. Whites of 4 eggs. Green juice from pounded spinach leaves for coloring. 3 jelly cake sheets of snow cake. Boil the sugar and water to thick syrup. Throw in the butter, then the pistachio nuts. Boil 5 minutes. Then stir in the white of the eggs and take it off when they thicken. Color it a little deeper than the pistachio green. Spread this when cold between 3 sheets of cake. 20. Havana cream cake. 8 ounces of fresh grated coconut. 1 pound of sugar. 4 large oranges. 2 lemons. 4 ounces of butter. 6 yolks and 2 whole eggs. Grate the rinds and squeeze the juice of the oranges and lemons into the sugar and bring it to a boil, making a flavored syrup. Throw in the butter, then the coconut, and boil 5 minutes. Stir in the eggs and cook slowly till thick. Spread between layers of snow cake. Then they are strange, the way they exclaim when they burn up a cake in the stove. Once we heard a lady sing, "Gee woiks, gee willikins, the door-trotted thing's gone black." That was at the toll house at Shippingsport, near Louisville, as we were going through the locks 27 years ago last anniversary, and anybody could know it was a cake burnt up by the black smell that came across the canal. Now one of us fellows would only have remarked, "Damn," kind of quietly, and lighted our pipe. In fact, you have to bake these white sheets with scarcely any color at all to look well with colored creams between and icing on top. 21. Glazed cakes. We use the term for cakes glazed over with boiled icings of different colors to make it distinction from the usual iced or frosted cakes with raw sugar icing. All the richness of cream candy bonbons belongs to these. They are better to cut, better to look at, and better to eat than the common, and after a very little practice are quicker made and dry immediately. 22. Yellow glaze or boiled icing. 1 pound granulated sugar. Half teacupful of water. 6 yolks of eggs. Flavoring extract. Boil the sugar and water without stirring for 5 minutes or more, or till a drop of the sugar in cold water sets so that it can be hardly flattened between the finger and the thumb. A deep bowl-shaped saucepan holding 1 quart should be used. Have the yolks slightly beaten ready in a bowl. Pour the bubbling syrup to the yolks quickly while you rapidly beat them with an egg beater. Return to the fire and keep stirring while it cooks a minute or 2. It will then do to pour on sheets of cake, and if the syrup was at the right point, it will set hard and dry as soon as cold. But it is better to finish by beating the glaze rapidly while it is cooling, and add the flavoring just as it becomes too thick to beat. The above is the easiest of the kind to make, as it does not make so much difference what point the syrup is boiled to. It will dry on the cake anyway. 23. White glaze or boiled icing. 1 pound of granulated sugar, half teacupful of water, 4 whites of eggs. Flavoring extract. Boil the sugar and water to a point thicker than for the yellow glaze, or till the drop in cold water sets hard and brittle. After the first mixing of the sugar and water, these syrups should never be stirred. Makes them turn into sugar. Don't beat the whites any more than enough to mix them. Pour the bubbling syrup to the whites, beating all the while. Set on the fire again and beat for a minute or two while it cooks. It is extremely liable to burn on the bottom. Then set the saucepan in a pan of ice water and beat the icing with a Dover egg beater until it becomes thick. It will be of a dazzling whiteness at last. Can be flavored to suit the fancy. If boiled to right point, sets hard as soon as spread or poured over the cake. 24. Rose glaze or boiled icing. Make the white glaze and color and flavor to suit, just as it begins to be so thick as to be hard to beat. 25. Chocolate glaze or boiled icing. 1 pound of granulated sugar, half teacupful of water, 3 ounces of grated chocolate, the common sort, 4 whole eggs, vanilla flavoring extract. Boil the sugar and water together in a deep saucepan for 5 minutes. Add the chocolate. When a drop in cold water sets hard, almost as candy, stir in the eggs rapidly. Beat all the while. Let cook about 5 minutes more with constant stirring. Flavor with vanilla. Beat more or less while it is cooling. Spread or pour it over sheets of cake. The confectioners, too, like us to make these glaze cake for their windows and showcases. They take pleasure when the cake is as white as the icing and the red jelly between the layers, in putting them in the front rank. Having 3 or 4 kinds of glaze and sheet cakes of the whitest cake, only about 1/3 of an inch thick to cover with them. You can cut them when set in squares or diamonds and triangles, red, white, yellow, and chocolate, and they make a very pretty stack. Besides, small cakes, such as sponge drops, can be dipped in the icings while hot, and other assortments made. Just the thing for an ornamental basket or pyramid. 26. Chocolate glaze without eggs. 1 pound of sugar, 1/4 teacupful of water, 4 ounces of common chocolate grated. Boil all together almost to a candy point. Flavor with vanilla when partly cooled. Beat a short time. Spread over the cake. Colored syrups of fruit juice and sugar boiled down thick enough to bubble and rise in the saucepan can be used instead of icings to cover cake with a glassy surface. 27. Items about puff paste. When puff paste has been rolled out and folded up again 4 times, it lies just like 2 quires of tissue paper piled alternately, a yellow sheet with a white sheet, a sheet of butter, and a sheet of paste, all of the same evenness and regularity from bottom to top. It is hard to get butter and dough to lie so equally, but that is what has to be tried for, and we have to show how to make them come so. If baked, then the sheets of paste or dough would be as sharp as knife blades, and might cut the mouth of the rash person who should try to eat them, and butter having run all out into the baking pan. One more rolling and folding makes the layers 2/3 thinner and eatable, and another rolling after that makes the layers thin enough to be blown away with the breath. The reason of these unfinished sheets of paste being so sharp-edged and continuous is there is no shortening rubbed into the flour when fine puff paste is wanted. The layers of dough are nothing but flour and water. Rubbing part or all of the butter or lard into the flour dry makes short paste, but not the marvelous, flaky, high-flying puff paste. Those who get their first instructions in home places never want to believe that. Some people say it is a matter of light touch, a peculiar temperament, a something inherited that makes certain individuals always and easily successes at making puff paste, and others always failures. They say women make better paste than men. There is no grounds for such distinction. The probability is it is a matter of sense and study, of headwork more than handwork. A giddy person does not make fine paste, but it is not their hand that's giddy, it's their head. It is the cause and effect again, and some cannot see their relation. Some people cannot place rolls in straight rows in the pan, nor lay strips on pies diamond-wise. It makes all the difference when a fresh cub comes into the kitchen to be a pastry cook's boy, if he has been one of these young ones that stand with their chin on the kitchen table, seeing their mother make pies. The others are assuming green and awkward. They will pour a pint of water into a big pan of flour and then go feeling around for the lumps it makes and pick them out one by one. They could not work the lump of dough they get that way without a sledgehammer, and pie dough has to be about as soft as mush. The way is to pour the water in a hole made in the middle of the flour and gently stir it around with 2 fingers till it is gathered in flour enough to be lifted out of the pan onto the table, there to be worked smooth and fit to roll out. The best puff paste is that made in 10, 15, or 20 minutes, according to the quantity, when one has no time to spare for packing it between pans of pounded ice or for other foolishness, when the butter has been worked smooth and pliable beforehand and lies ready in a pan of ice water, when the ice water stands ready to mix with, the flour is cold and the oven is hot and waiting, then you turn out paste that puffs and rises high and dry and wholesome. The reason is the ingredients don't have time to get warm and soggy, and there is an immense amount of labor and trouble saved over the ice packing way. Still, of course, the same method is not practicable in every place. When the plain, soft flour and water dough has been rolled out as if for cutting biscuits out of, but instead is covered all over with the required amount of butter in lumps, and then the dough is folded over it, the essential thing, and the only difficult one, is to get the dough and butter to roll out again and again at even pace. Soft butter will give way under the rolling pin and leave its place, burst through or out at the ends. It is of no use trying with really soft butter. But when it is of medium firmness, the dough may be mixed very soft to match it, and good paste may be made. With the flour and water extremely cold, the butter often hardens in the paste instead of softening. That is success whether done in 1 or 2 hours in an ice chest or in 10 minutes on a cold table. There is another difficulty in the way of even distribution. The more the dough is worked and rolled, the tougher it becomes and springs back while the butter does not. To overcome that, the paste is allowed to rest a while after about 3 rollings, but it is better in warm weather to get along without such an interval, by not kneading the dough at all and having it soft enough at the start. The experienced workman goes through a certain routine every day that makes all exigencies, and his work is always alike, while others talk about luck and having a light hand for fine paste. They make a great fuss, the people who make verses do, about the beauties of milking the cows as if there were no flies and cows didn't kick. It is much more charming to be working the butter. We have seen them at the summer resort houses. They go where the spring water runs cold and work the lump of butter in a trough till it is just perfection to make puff paste with. Though no dairymaid ever will let her fresh lump of butter go for such a purpose. We have to work the butter, as well as the time allowable in the crowded forenoon permits, by pounding it in a wooden bowl with a potato masher. Cold butter that is not so broken and made pliable is as bad as warm, for it will not be pressed out by rolling, but cuts its way through the lumps everywhere. We have another newer and entirely different way of making fine leaf paste, but like this common way, the best for meeting all the varied requirements of hotel work, and this is the formula. 28. Puff paste. 1 pint of water, 2 coffee cupfuls. Flour, all the water will take up. Butter, from 1.5 to 2 pounds. Mix the flour and water to soft dough. Roll it about 1 inch thick. Take half the butter and drop it in lumps the size of eggs upon the sheet of the dough, the width of 2 fingers pressed between each lump. Sift a little flour over. Press the butter into the dough slightly, then fold the dough over in 3. Roll out to the same thickness as before. Distribute the remaining half the butter over it, dredge, and fold over in 3 again, and count that 1 fold. The former folding with only half the butter in counts nothing, or half a turn. Always keep the dough rolled out to a square shape, and turn the broad side towards you after folding. Roll and fold till you have counted 6 times. Use plenty of flour under and over until the last rolling, when the surplus should be swept off. It is then ready for use. 29. After a few trials, neither butter nor flour need be weighed. The rule of butter size of an egg, 2 fingers apart, is all that is wanted, and the amount to be made can be governed by the cups or dippers of water used. 30. Lard for puff paste. Then there is the question of expense. They hate to furnish first-rate butter enough to make good puff paste. People are fond of pies and pastries, and it costs like 60. There is little use in making paste as rich as it can be made anyway, except when it is for fancy articles. The tall, puffed-up edges of pies are oftenest thrown away with all their fine butter in them, only because people cannot eat everything, and the middle of the pie goes first. Butter that is only just a little off does well enough, but butter that is bad spoils the whole article, filling and all clear through. Good lard is far better than poor butter to make good, eatable, white and light pastry, and some sorts will make just as tall puff paste as butter will. Oily and grainy lard will not. It has to be the firm, tough, tenacious kind of dried out lard. The very best everyday kind of paste is made with half butter and half good firm lard. Then a little salt must be strewn over the lumps of lard after they are spread on the dough. Butter alone carries salt enough. 31. Compressed lard. The most wonderfully light and tall puff paste that beat butter pastry all hollow used to be made in the times when lard oil was used in immense quantities before kerosene came in. Of the stearine lard, the residue left after pressing out all the oil. This was as hard as tallow, but of a different texture. Oil is the greatest enemy to puff paste, and stearine contains none. Then we had vol au vents that a small goose could be hidden in that rose several inches high above their own lightness. It looks like the sweet fresh suet that comes in so plentifully with the fat loins of beef ought to be better for pastry than strong butter and miserable oily lard, and so it is, and comes next to the stearine lard mentioned above, but can only be used after going through a particular process. People try to use melted suet or tallow or drippings, and they mince raw suet and then pound it fine. But however good short paste these make, they will not produce puff paste. The suet or tallow is always composed of hard grains that cut through and destroy the flakes. The proper process is something of a trade secret, a good thing for those who work for themselves to save butter by. 32. To prepare suet for making puff paste. Cut the suet very small, leaving out all the dark meat stained pieces, and set on the side of the range in a boiler with plenty of hot water. The suet must not boil, but steep in scalding water for a few hours. Then pour water and all into a large strainer with a bottom perforated tin, a gravy strainer, and rub the fat through with a potato masher. Get the pan of broken ice and water and a little salt in it, and dip the strained fat by ladlefuls into it, stirring the ice about at the same time. The fat sets instantly on falling into the cold water in crumbs like meal. Gather it by straining, press it together, and pound it with a masher in a bowl as you would butter. Salt it for use. Some years ago, about the close of the war, the writer had a friendly contention with a fine cook who made splendid pastry as to whether as fine puff paste could not be made by the old-fashioned way just explained as by this following. It was finally decided, after both ways had been tested to the utmost, that there was no difference in the results, but there are certain everyday work considerations in favor of the old way. The leaf paste is fine for fancy tarts. The workman who would be perfect in his trade will practice both. It's bad to have a fellow come along and beat you. French puff paste, or feuilletage. It is requisite to have the butter very firm and free from water. And those who wish to have very superior pastry will use the finest flour. Weigh your butter and flour in equal proportions. Cut the butter into thin slices. Take a little flour and roll it with a slice of butter into flakes. Proceed thus until all the butter and flour are rolled together. Gather the flakes into a heap and sprinkle them with water. About 1.5 gills is required for a pound of paste. Make into a smooth paste with the hand, then roll it out into the thickness of 1/2 inch. If a pound of paste, divide it into 4 parts. Flour the board and roll out each part as thin as a wafer. Fold over 4 or 5 times and use as required. Bake as soon as possible. Then try this and hold fast that which you succeed the best. Fine leaf paste, 10-minute paste. 1 pound of cold butter. 1 pound of cold flour. 1/2 pint ice water, a coffee cupful. Cut the butter into pieces size of walnuts and put them in a vessel containing broken ice and water sometime before using to become very hard and cold. Sift the flour into a pan and lay aside a handful to dust with. Throw in the lumps of butter. Mix them with the dry flour. Pour in the ice water and shake all together, merely getting the flour dampened and stuck to the lumps of butter without kneading or pressing. Scrape out the contents of the pan onto the table well floured. Press it up together and then roll it out with all the force necessary to break the lumps of butter and spread all out into a thin sheet. Now loosen it from the table with the palette knife and roll it up like a roly-poly pudding and count 1. Roll it out again to half an inch. Fold over in 3 like ordinary paste and count 2. And so roll and fold in 3 till you have counted 6 foldings. But when half done, it should have an interval of 5 or 10 minutes to stand in a cold place and lose its elasticity. Sweet dreams.